you like playing music from artists like Dream Theater, Killswitch Engage, and AC/DC, but find that they're using alternate tunings and you use floating bridge guitar, so you can't always make these alternate tunings happen without resetting up your whole guitar. Or maybe you just hate bringing a second or third guitar to a gig and you can't be bothered to retune. Well, today we're going to do the ultimate shootout between the DigiTech Drop, the Fractal Virtual Capo, and Neural's Archetype Petrucci. I'm going to give you clear comparisons for both clean and high gain tones. We're going to go over the spots where software pitch modulation will work and where it totally won't work, as well as some production tips on how to hide the little glitches that can come from using digital transposition tools. Lastly, I'm going to give you rules for what gauge of strings to use when tuning down, and a trick you can use for floating bridge guitars when you've got that one weird song where you've got to use drop tuning versus standard tuning. As usual, there's a few things we need to get out of the way first before we can begin. First is how we talk about tunings. If you walk into any guitar store and pick up a guitar, there's a 99.99% chance it's going to be tuned to E standard. That means E, A, D, G, B, E. Now, if you take the lowest string and you tune it down one step, now you're in a tuning called drop D because the lowest string is dropped to D. Now, for consistency's sake, the way I like to refer to tunings beyond standards and also drop tuning is based on whether they used a drop tuning or a standard tuning. So there's kind of two things you can think about here. So if I say C standard, that would translate to C, F, B flat, E flat, G, and C. This is because all the intervals between the notes remain the same as it would in E standard. Now if I say drop C, that would translate to C, G, C, F, A, D. And you can think of the guitar being dropped down to D standard, and then the lowest string being dropped one more whole tone to get to your destination. Drop C. See how that works? Second is that pitch blocks don't read the data of the guitar strings. While the modern pickup is sophisticated in many ways, at the end of the day, it's just an electromagnet that picks up the vibration of the metal that happens to be close by. That means that if you're using any kind of pitch changing algorithm, it can only read the total output of the guitar signal. And that means that we can only apply pitch changes globally to our input guitar signal. So the trick to all of this is to set your tuning, whether it's a drop tuning or standard tuning, and then to apply your pitch change pedals. For example, if I wanted to play My Curse by Killswitch Engage, which uses drop C, and I don't want to go into jangly string land and loosen all of my strings, I can simply set my guitar to drop D and then use my pitch change pedal to get the rest of the guitar down one whole step to drop C. Third, any sort of pitch modulation that is intended to effectively change the tuning of the guitar and not be used as some kind of weird effect needs to be first in the signal chain. To be extra clear, that means it needs to be the very first thing that you plug into. Yes, it goes before wah and it goes before volume, which, by the way, I'll be making a video on the big mistake that I made when I first got my volume pedal and how you can properly integrate it into your signal chain. So hit subscribe and the bell so you can get notified when it comes out. Also, we have an email list if you prefer not to engage in the cluster that is YouTube notifications. So with all that out of the way, let's get into the demos. I'm going to run a few different excerpts with each pitch block going down from E and then down to C standard by using whole step intervals. The reason I'm going to do it just down to C is because that is about the lowest note you're going to want to play through any pitch pedal. If you're going any lower than that, please retune your guitar. Fractal standard. So now that we're through the comparisons, here are my thoughts. The fractal pitch block, or whatever's built into your model, is always going to be the most convenient, but it's usually the least flexible. The fractal pitch block has a variety of settings so that you can tune it for whether you're playing single notes or chords, but the drawbacks are that it's kind of the worst sounding option here, and it takes a lot of processing power and it can lead to a super cramped layout when setting up your preset. That's why thinking about which blocks you can use outside of the system is a good idea. So here's an example of what my acoustic guitar chain from a Majesty would look like if I had to cram the software pitch block into the setup. I thought that the neural one sounded as good as the DigiTech Drop in a lot of distortion scenarios, but unfortunately it really suffered with a lot of warbles in acoustic scenarios. And also I found that the latency was a lot tougher to deal with, and it's only included with Archetype Petrucci. So unless you have a quad cortex or you want to fiddle with having, two plugins in your DAW, like you're going to use this one for the sound and then, use this other one for the transposition, then it can get pretty fiddly pretty fast, and it really wasn't my favorite. And in fact, I really felt that the Fractal audio block did better in lower acoustic scenarios than the neural one did in low acoustic scenarios. That leads me to say that, in my personal opinion, the DigiTech Drop is usually the best bet, and it's kind of the best all-rounder. If you watched my pedalboard mounting video, which is a great one to watch after this video, you'll know that this pedal is so important to me that it's the only outboard pedal on my whole rig. Anyways, I'm not here to sell you a DigiTech Drop. It's a great pedal for sure, but it's not without its limits. So now I want to go through and show you where the limits of these devices are. And by the way, these issues go for pretty much any pitch block. So for brevity, I'll only be demonstrating them on the DigiTech Drop, since we've established it's kind of the superior pitch modulation pedal here. There's 3 places where these tools start to artifact and get weird. The first one is high acoustic exposed chords, specifically after the attack. The chords can get a little warbly. And then low, crunchy, tight chords. There's just a lot of information going through the pedal and can get a little weird, especially on the note attack and the note end. All that said, I feel like I got the best general response from the Fractal pitch block with the tracking set to 0 and the algorithm set to fast. I never used the Fractal pitch block to transpose down. You could use it to transpose up, but with the existence of capos, that's not really necessary. Now, I want to explain why all of this is for those people out there who are super audio nerds about why tuning higher generally sounds better than tuning down, and why these pitch blocks are generally great at doing one thing and not another. So in audio, we have a measurement, of course, called hertz, which measures the cycles per second. When we're increasing a sound, we're basically increasing the hertz, we're increasing the cycles per second, and it's kind of like putting more information in less space. And that leads to greater clarity in the signal. Versus when we detune a signal, we're basically stretching out those hertz and it has less information to work with. So that's why when you're, say, tuning a bass, or there's like a special bass tuner, or you can use the 12th fret harmonic to tune an instrument, it's because effectively you're putting more cycles per second through any sort of pitch processor, and that gives it more information to work with, and it gives it a better output result. So with that nerdy bit out of the way, let's talk about some of the tricks that I have for tuning down and implementing the DigiTech Drop or any kind of pitch pedal into production. So here's the rule that I learned from my teacher for drop tunings, which I'm not a huge gent, super low player guy. But this is what he said to me. He said, for every 2 steps you go down, go up 1 string gauge. So if you play a, 9s in standard tuning and you're going to tune your guitar down to C, I would go up to 10s. If I went down to, say, maybe B or B flat, I might go up to, 11s or 12s at that point. You're going to have to play with it, and I'm sure if you search on, the gent forums, you can find some much more wonderful advice here, but that's going to be some general advice to get you started and start playing with string gauges. So when it comes to production, what I tend to do when I'm using my DigiTech Drop, or I have an idea that's, say, in C or something, is I'll use the DigiTech Drop on my standard tuned guitar for the rhythm stuff, and then I'll record the leads without the DigiTech Drop, because a lot of my mixes are padded with keyboards. It's going to fill out those middle frequencies, and the lead guitar isn't running through the pitch modulator of any kind, and it's going to be the main thing that you're going to hear. It really hides any issues that you're going to have. So here's an example of a song of mine recorded in this way. The rhythm guitars were recorded with the DigiTech Drop pitched down to C standard, and the lead was recorded on this guitar without the DigiTech Drop. So lastly, here's my trick for needing to play in drop tunings without resetting up your whole guitar, and that is you can fashion a little piece of something like a block of acrylic or wood, and you can stick it behind the bridge. And what that'll do is it'll stop the bridge block from coming in and the rest of the strings changing tuning. Now, obviously, if you have a bigger block, that's going to help to spread the impact, because there's quite a lot of tension on guitar strings, right? But also, when you do this, you can't use the whammy bar, so just don't do that. But this is the trick that I used for an audition that didn't have a lot of whammy stuff in it, and I did pretty well at the audition and had no issues going from standard to drop, and yeah. Now, if you play a Majesty, this guitar has a very custom bridge, and somebody out there is going to go, oh, well, you should use a D-Tuna, or, you know, you can add this thing or that thing, and, you know, I, like most owners of these precious guitars, don't like to do crazy modifications to them. So if you are insane and you want to hack up a Majesty and add a D-Tuna or add a Tremel-No, go for it. Those are definitely valid and potential solutions, but for me, that's not my deal. By the way, since using that little block I just set down over there, I've changed from 10s down to 9s, and the block doesn't fit anymore. So as long as you don't change your string gauges, then the little block trick will work. So after watching this, I bet you're about to go out and get a DigiTech Drop, but the next problem you're going to run into is how to mount that pedal to your pedal board, especially if you're using something like me, who's got a giant Fractal system and there's not a lot of space left because you've got a wah and a volume and all that. So that's why you should go watch my pedal board mounting video, where I devised a unique way to mount these hefty units to my pedal board rock solid, as well as kind of mount the DigiTech Drop as a floating pedal instead of just to the board. So if you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, I'd love if you hit that like and subscribe button and you shared it with a friend. It really helps me out. If you have ideas for future videos or think I left anything out, leave them down below. So that concludes my thoughts on all things pitch pedals. I highly recommend you grab a DigiTech Drop. If you're doing any sort of low tuning stuff on a floating bridge guitar, it's really an indispensable and wonderful tool, completely worth it. And if you're going to go far below standard tuning, you might consider upping your string gauge, or a combination of string gauge plus a transposition pedal based on what kind of production you're doing. Play with your tools and let your ears guide you. Be persistent in your experimentation, and you'll find what works best for you. There's not always one right answer. So that's all for today. Catch you in the next one. Peace.